Oh, hi, welcome to No Veil Recovery. I am Jazz and this is Sebastian. In this episode today, we're going to be talking about childhood traumas, big or small, how addiction can happen in the home and where it can come from, and what is a safe parent, what is a reactive parent. And we're just going to go back and forth around those three topics, and whatever else comes up, comes up. And so, Sebastian, what do you do? What is your occupation?
So I'm a therapist. That's how most people would refer to me as, or how I'd refer to myself to most people, but officially a registered clinical counselor.
Right. Yeah.
And I work in private practice.
Right. Thank you. And do you normally work with more children?
So I split
Or
my caseload pretty significantly to
Yeah.
keep me on my toes. The last thing
Yeah.
I want is to just kind of become complacent working with like one specific demographic, but
Yes.
working with kids is like 50% of my caseload for sure.
Right.
Yeah, and focused on trauma specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
So which is more your niche or desire niche?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I've I've always had my career be focused working with youth and children, so it's
Yeah.
just been an easy transition when I became a counselor to focus on youth and children as a population.
Yep.
But I don't think I have a preference. I like having a lot of variety.
Yes.
Like I said, it keeps me on my toes. You know, it exposes me to a lot of different kind of stories and experiences, and I think that that's one of the really cool things about my job is I get to hear these really unique experiences that folks have and share in their understanding of the world and how they navigate it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so do you like your job?
I love my job.
Okay.
It's the best. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I think I would have liked being a counselor too.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's start with like there are small traumas and big traumas. And I think sometimes people think that like children don't get traumatized because they don't have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And say speaking from someone that has struggled with addiction and trauma in my life, like I think that the voice is there, it just doesn't come out till later. And the impact does happen even though the children can't speak. And so I think that most people know what like a big trauma is, like, and I guess, but what are like smaller traumas? Like, do smaller traumas count? Like, what kind of impact does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really cool question because separating big T trauma and small T trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
Big T trauma being these large, life-threatening style events that people can sometimes experience, a really bad car accident or experiencing a natural disaster, war, really intense assaults of any kind. Those can be considered like big T trauma. Then there's this idea that there's other forms of traumatic experiences, small T trauma, but tend to be maybe swept aside sometimes, like bullying or harassment, or not having certain kind of access to like food all the time, right? It's just like, oh, you might not consider that a big T trauma, but over time that can really influence a brain development. It can really influence people's ability to cope in their environment and can create an environment that is traumatic. Now, the really important thing to keep in mind too with trauma is that we don't diagnose trauma, right? Nobody gets diagnosed with trauma like you now have it. It doesn't work like that. It's more of just like a symptom of an experience that gets that we use, and we use the word to express like having someone live through that. So it's not a diagnosable thing per se. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people get confused about trauma as just like you either have it or you don't. It's like, well, it's not that clear cut. We don't understand it fully like that, or at least we don't portray it fully in that same way. So when I work with clients myself who have a diagnosis, usually it's actually post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
And we look at that and say, oh, you've gone through traumatic things. You have trauma. Trauma is more of just like a way to, I guess, express how people then respond to those experiences, and we work from there. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not labeled, and no one gets out without any kind of traumas ever happening. And then I'm thinking like, even say nothing ever happened to you.
Yeah.
That could almost be a form of like some kind of small trauma, small T.
What do you mean by nothing happens to you?
Like, well, I think it's very rare that you have like fully safe, fully healthy homes.
Oh yeah.
And then even
Yeah.
then, if it's all perfect, it's like living in that perfectionism can do something.
Oh, yeah, 100%. That's a really good point.
Right.
There's this idea that, we want to protect children from
Mm-hmm.
experiencing any kind of harm, but at the same time, like, humans are supposed to experience distress to a certain degree. We don't want to flood the system and get them overloaded to the point where they're like full-blown panic, but to be able to experience stress and be able to work through that is so, so important. And you see this sometimes where, like,
Right.
children have been so overly protected, and all of a sudden they're faced, let's say they go to college or whatever, and then they're on their own. They face a really big kind of stressful thing, and they don't know how to cope. So
Right.
yeah, it can be negative to someone's experience to not have any kind of distress, but at the same time, you also don't want to overload that. So it is a balance between the two. Now, would that be considered traumatic? I guess someone could, yeah, say like, and that's the thing about
Like
not
a
being,
small trauma.
yeah, but it's more like, because it doesn't have a strict diagnosis, someone could say that for them, not having any kind of exposure to any kind of manageable stress is traumatic because now they don't know how to cope. And so they might turn to similar coping mechanisms like alcohol to be able to manage stress, or lashing out because they don't know how to navigate a complex relationship, for example. So you could say theoretically that, yeah, that could be traumatic, or someone might identify that as traumatic because of the lack of exposure. But that's a really good. That's a really good thought. I'd have to think about that a little bit more, though. Yeah.
Right. And you said something about lashing out as a behavior to
Yeah.
cope. Like I work on a lot of codependency work.
Yeah.
As I've gotten sober, and then now I'm in that. I work on codependency,
Yeah.
and that is a lot of like working on behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
and that like you can actually have addictive behaviors. You can have behaviors that you go to quickly to
Mm-hmm.
keep yourself safe.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that like lots of those people like push aside behaviors like as in like that's just the way I am, or I just do that,
Mm.
or yeah, well I get angry, so like that's
Yeah.
just the way it is. Like
Yeah.
they almost, it feels like they're almost like using that as an excuse to be that way, but it's actually from something,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think I like to think of humans as these ego-driven beings. And
Yeah.
so when we do something and someone calls us out, or someone kind of goes, "Well, that's weird," our immediate response is to go, "No, it's not. I do it, therefore it must be somewhat okay." Until you get to the point of really allowing yourself to be vulnerable and acknowledging that perhaps the way you're engaging in the world isn't super healthy or isn't super helpful, right?
Mm,
I try to steer away from saying things like it's good or it's bad, because
right.
with
Because that's
clients,
this or that, black and
yeah, it's
white,
exactly.
right?
It's too black and
Yeah.
white.
Yeah.
And it is, and the risk is that if you say that's bad, and if you then start to internalize that what I'm doing is bad, therefore I must be bad, then the belief system starts to shift. It's like, I'm just a bad person. Well, what do bad people do? They do bad things. And so of
Hmm.
course I'm going to behave in a bad way. And you can see this in like
Right.
people who don't want to seem like they don't want to change their behavior. They're like, that's just who I am. It's like, well, what is your belief system about who you are? You think you're a bad person, and some people it's like, yeah, I'm a bad guy, or I'm a bad individual, and they'll live that almost like they'll like self-fulfilling prophecy type thing. And
Right.
with trauma, it impacts, right, emotionally, impacts physically. So you're talking about like these physical behaviors, like for sure,
Hmm.
like the way you behave, and then cognitively, the way you think about yourself, the way you think about the world. So there's a lot of like components to think about in how your early childhood experience, but also trauma can happen in adulthood, and how these experiences can start to morph the brain or shift the wiring of your brain in
Hmm.
order to kind of cope and also create safety, because that's what your brain wants. It's like, how do I
Yeah,
make
your
sure
brain
that I'm
wants
safe?
safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, what is like the most important developmental time
Mm,
for kids?
wow.
Or it's like, is it all the way till you're 20, or is it like,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
I think so really young children are extremely resilient, right? That's
younger
a
children are
super
extremely, yeah.
resilient, but that's a byproduct of their malleabilities, that their brain's ability to shift and be taught and influence. So you've got a really cool way of like how the way brain is structured is that even though you experience really intense things as a child, you could come out of it with some work, or maybe even on your own sometimes, without too much of a negative repercussion, if you will.
Hmm.
But that also means that, if you don't have that luxury of being able to survive a traumatic experience in like a really well kind of coped way, I guess, however you want to frame that, then the risk is that it shifts your brain into a way that makes it really hard to cope. And so the younger you
Mm.
are, the more malleable your brain is. But then the older you are, the more skills you already have. So the more resilient you already are in that way, right? But
Yeah.
then it becomes harder to shift sometimes because you might be more resistant to shift because you're less accepting of others, right? The older you become, you can be kind of stuck in your ways. I don't believe in the
Mm-hmm.
whole like you can't, the saying you can't teach old dogs new tricks. I don't know if you're familiar with
Right.
that saying. Um,
Right.
I don't believe in that per se, but someone who is in their 60s might be just like, I've been doing this for 50 years, I'm okay with it, and they just accept it. Whereas a child might be like, oh, I care about how my friends don't like how I do things. So it really kind of depends on the individual. I don't know if there's a stage specifically that is most crucial for child development in terms of making sure that they're well taken care of. I think that goes through until they feel um, confident enough to be independent. So it's as long as you can be supportive to your children because they need that, and that will change over time as how that looks like. I think it's all crucial.
Right, right. So it's like having your child experience regular, like gentle stress,
Yeah, yeah,
and then being available to help them through that stress because they need
exactly.
to learn how to use their
Yeah,
skills. And then I guess, yeah, having like a safe parent, having someone to go to,
yeah.
right? So what would that look like what does a safe parent look like?
Hmm. I think it depends on the individual a little bit, but
Right.
generally
Like,
speaking,
what is the hope?
the hope is that you're able to be consistent, right?
Okay,
You
yeah,
want to be
yeah,
able to give your children a form of structure that they can hang on to. So like you
yeah.
anchor them in the idea that what how you show up and what they're going to do is going to have a similar or same response. So it's like you can make it really easy and say having consistent meal times can create structure, right? But
Okay.
on things that are maybe a little bit more complex, like how you respond to your child when they throw something at you because they're having a tantrum, right? If you're all over the place in how you respond, your kid's not going to know what the response is going to be, and they're not going to have the same capacity to go, if I throw this, mom is going to do that, or dad is going to do that, or parent, guardian, whatever is going to do this. Therefore, the cause and effect thing doesn't really happen the same way. And
Right. So, sorry.
yeah,
So, if a parent freaks out because the child threw
yeah,
something, the child still doesn't know what to do. I guess they're just scared because
yeah,
now you freaked
yeah.
out.
You're not regulated. So
Yeah. So
co-regulation, you're
there's
familiar.
no teaching happening.
Yeah,
There's just
exactly.
almost hiding.
Yeah, the kid's gonna try to find a way to feel good in that moment, right?
Right.
So it's like, and the emotion is also going to take over. So like the amygdala, part of the brain that kind of like not responsible for
Right.
emotions per se, but and that's how we often explain it. It's going to be firing on all cylinders and going really, really intense. And whatever that emotion is, so if it's fear, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to take over. And their ability to then go into the logic part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex,
Gets
severed.
harder.
Yeah, like
Yes.
sometimes
Yeah.
completely shut off. And we see this in adults too, right? If
Oh
you're like
yeah.
off the handle, trying to be reasonable by your approach, sometimes it's just not happening. And with children, how they learn to do that is through something called co-regulation. So they see how you
Yes.
respond to things.
Yes.
If your kid throws something and you're able to go, hey, that really hurt me, you shouldn't throw. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can be a little bit more stern, or you can like remove the child from the environment and say like, hey, I'm not going to stand for that, and walk away. And when you're ready to
Yes.
say
I
sorry,
like
you
that.
come. It also has to be age appropriate. They're going to know over time if you do that consistently. It's like when I throw things, parent is going to respond this way. Therefore, how do I want to actually do this? And then they have the choice to whether they want to still throw the thing or not. Then there's a
Yes.
consequence. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay, I have to touch on some of
Okay.
that. So, like, I love that the consistency,
Mhm.
the laying out the boundary of
Mhm.
like, if you do that, I'm gonna walk away,
Mhm.
or just the consistency of, I'm hurt, and if you do that, and then you do walk away each time,
Yeah.
and then to not have like not adding more emotion to a dysregulated child by
Yes.
you continuing to be more emotional.
Yeah.
um, but just like, you know, you can still lay the point without being reactive
Totally.
and emotional.
Totally.
And it's
Yes.
almost like by your removing your presence. And then I also like the when you lay out the boundary or the instruction of like, if you do this, this will happen,
Mm-hmm.
it gives children the sense of like, I still have power here. I still have
Mm-hmm.
equality. Like,
Sure.
instead of that like dominating superiority kind of
Yes.
angle, like
Yeah.
top down, like,
Yeah.
like, because yeah. So if you
Yes.
have something to share on
Yeah,
that,
that's
like, yeah, that's
the
all great.
what we call agency sometimes. So like the
Yes.
person, the
Yeah.
individual's ability to feel like they have free will and power to make decisions that will impact their world. Really, really
Mm-hmm.
important. And for children to learn that that has value but also consequence, I think is really
Yeah.
important, right?
Yeah.
You can throw the thing. You will
Yeah.
throw it if you really want to, but what happens is this. And for some kids, they're like, I don't care. You know, you might have a really rambunctious kid, and they're like, I don't care about getting in trouble. Sure.
Oh yeah, I hate it
Usually
when
they,
they do that.
yeah, and usually they grow out of that eventually. But
Yeah.
temperament is a big thing, right? There's like a lot of individual components to how kids respond, and then you're talking about the parenting thing. There's three styles of parenting sometimes that get talked about. So it's permissive, which is a parent who is maybe a little bit too lax on things, so they'll allow their
Always say
children to do a
yes.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
very little consequences and stuff like that. Then there's authoritarian, which
Yeah.
is a parent who rules with an iron fist. You know, it's just like it's my way or the highway.
Right.
If you cross me, it's game over. It's just like really, really intense, kind of like old school, maybe parenting. And then authoritative, which is you have boundaries, you have structure, you are kind of like there is a hierarchical value there, you know, where it's like I am the parent and you have to listen to what I have to say because I need to be responsible for your safety. Legally, I have to take care of you, but you also have a tremendous amount of compassion for a child's like world experience that they might just not understand in that moment what they're doing. Right? You mentioned earlier, it's just like if I do this, this happens. That requires a certain amount of understanding. Right? It's just like, can you connect the dots that if you throw, then you will get some kind of consequence. They might be too young to understand that, or they might be too dysregulated to like put that together. So
Right.
there's a lot of things to consider. But yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I know, like, for my older boys that are like 7, 8,
Mm-hmm.
talking to them about that can work. But
Mm-hmm.
for my younger ones, like, normally if that happens, it's almost like I just remove the toy
Yeah.
quietly.
Yeah.
You know, I do the action, but I don't do it in an explosive way.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get that and take it away.
Yeah.
Like, I don't make it more dramatic. I just, I try to almost make it like when they are misbehaving in a way that's like hitting their brother or something, like I take the stimulation away, like hold their hand so now they can't, like, you know what I mean, or make it boring, like
Sure.
I just try to make it really boring when they're trying to like get a reaction, or
That's
maybe
cool.
they're bored themselves, but it's like the behavior, I don't want to keep that going.
Sure. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think too is like you know, you're mentioning like your own kids, like the intuition part of a parent. You know your child better than probably anybody else. And even if you bring like a kid to therapy, a lot of parents are like, do something, help me. It's just like, whoa, hold on, like you've got like a lot to give here. Like your kid is not going to attach to the therapeutic relationship that I create with them in the same way that they attach to you. And so being able to understand that maybe that physical touch thing is something that really calms them down, something I'll probably never be able to know because I don't like physically like touch any of my clients. It's just like a boundary, a hard boundary that I have. Okay, maybe like a handshake if they were like they're introducing for the first time, but
you wouldn't regulate.
I wouldn't regulate them with
there's
physical touch.
There's lines.
So as a parent, you can do these like really beautiful, really amazing things that like can change the scenario in a split second.
Yeah.
Right. And so that intuition part of like knowing how your kid or what your kid needs is also super important. You can't do that if you're not regulated. So as a parent, it's super, super important to be able to go, okay, my child is doing this. I'm getting super frustrated. I better find a way to tone my own emotion or tune my emotions down a little bit.
Right.
Otherwise, it's probably not going to end well.
So like first priority is regulate.
Yeah.
You can't do anything unless
ignore
they're regulated and you're regulated.
Ignore unless it's a safety concern, ignore your kid until you're regulated. Is kind of like the motto, right? And if it means you just need to take like 3 deep breaths and then you respond, whatever. It's not like they're gonna, you know, within like 30 seconds, it's probably not going to escalate that much more. But obviously, if it's a safety concern, they're about to like run on the road. Yeah, sure, yell at your kid to get their attention or grab them really quickly. But that's like if there's an actual safety concern there. Otherwise, it's not super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, so say, let's talk about like the reactive
Mm-hmm.
parent. So say like I think like a reactive parent can also be like, why do you always do that? Or like,
Mm-hmm.
don't put that there.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you kind of like jet at your child,
Yeah.
um, that's basically a dysregulated adult
Yeah. Yeah. It
in a
can be.
way,
Yeah.
and
Either.
it's
Yeah.
coming out as a harsh instruction.
Yeah.
But that is almost reactive to the child.
It
Like
can be. Yeah.
and then yeah, and then so like that say I'm creating that kind of person. What does that do to a little kid?
So, what does a reactive parent
Yeah,
like do to a child's brain, essentially? Um,
yeah,
I think so. This is where we go into like behavior modeling, right? So,
mm-hmm.
children can kind of think of their brains as sponges. They just absorb everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the moment, it might not seem like anything is happening, but what you're teaching your kid is a normalized behavior. It's okay for you because it's okay for me to react this way.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the risk is that over time, the kid's going to respond in the same way. So when they're frustrated, they might be reactive to you, but then in their own relationships with their friends, in their romantic relationships later in life, they might have that reactive response because, like, well, my parent talked to me like this. It must be okay.
Right, that's what they've learned,
Yeah,
and it's almost like an indirect way of communicating.
totally. Yeah, it's exactly that. Yeah.
Because you're freaking out at like the thing,
Yeah.
like say the garbage didn't get put away properly or the shoes are by the door, like you're freaking about the thing
Yeah.
instead of like this is where you come back with boundaries. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, like shoes by the door,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
like consistently saying a calm instruction of what you actually want your child to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, like children are always watching their parents, so whatever you're doing as a parent is what you're saying is okay to have to be,
Exactly.
and then they're learning how to cope in the world because
Yeah.
they watch you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Luckily, kids have a lot of influences and mentors, and in school they'll have teachers, and
right.
there's oftentimes there's other family members and friends' parents. So there is a lot of influence from outside sources as well. But a parent is like core, right? Or
Yeah,
whoever the
yeah.
guardian is. It's not always a parent. Is really core to that child's development in terms of what they learn is okay. And so if you're responding in a reactive way, that's just
Hmm.
going to become part of the like accepted norm of how to react in those situations.
Right, and then like how that can show up later is that it's comfortable to be around those types of people again. So it's like,
Sure. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah. You,
then you grow up into be an adult, and it's possible that you might choose partners like that.
yeah.
You know, you might choose friends
Yes.
like that
Yeah.
or bosses like that.
Yeah. And that extent, that's a really good point. It extends even further how if you're in a partnership, so if your kids see you interact with a partner,
Mm,
and if you're reactive to your partner, but you're really regulated with your kids, they're still going to look at that and you're still modeling relational behaviors, right? So they're going to
right,
go, it's okay for a parent or for parents to yell at each other, but maybe it's not okay for them to yell at kids. And that could become,
right.
so it's kind of like all around. They really absorb
There's a
everything.
lot, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're almost you're showing what love is.
Yeah.
You're showing
Yeah.
like relational love. Like, oh, mommy is like this with daddy, and like, oh, mommy is allowed to be like that to daddy and yell, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Or like or someone's not here often, or they always leave when this happens. Like everything is being recorded in a
Yeah.
way
Yeah. That's
by your
a
child,
really good way to put it. Yeah.
even though they're not telling you that it's all being recorded.
Yeah.
It's all going in.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So yeah, like
Yeah.
I think that we in the world today with so much like divorce and relationship issues, it's like I think a lot of people are at a young age are exposed to shown what love should look like,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there
Mm-hmm.
used to be more, there used to be kids used to get beaten more when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's becoming more
Mm-hmm.
removed, but now we're like starting to realize like, well, there is like emotional stuff that's
Yeah.
happening that's causing a lot of impact as well. So
Yeah.
like emotional neglect, like how do you think, what does that look like?
So it can be really difficult to identify that type of neglect
Mm-hmm.
because it's not something that you can have like physical evidence of, right? A social
Right.
worker could see a child and like there's specific like areas where there are bruises, for example, where they can suspect that maybe neglect has happened, and also like you can hear or sorry, abuse, not neglect. If there's like outbursts, you can hear it. So there's a lot of like more physical evidence for physical abuse or physical neglect,
Mm-hmm.
but emotional one is a little bit more subtle. So the things that we would look for is in a child's like emotional affect. So like flat affect is like, if a kid's just kind of like dazed in a way where they're not really
Right.
expressing emotions. They're just kind of like numb to the world. 'Cause that's a really good coping mechanism for the brain, right? It's just like, if I don't
Right.
feel anything, good.
So like almost like indifference and no FOMO. Like
Yeah.
I don't care what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or it can
Yeah.
look like really low mood. So like lethargic, but even like suicidal. And we see that in really young kids sometimes, as young as like 7 or 8, who have like suicidal tendencies
Oh
because they're just
no.
so like emotionally distraught. And it's not necessarily
Like
like a,
defeated.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
hopeless.
yeah. And hopelessness is a
That's
huge,
awful.
huge kind of marker. It's like if a kid says they're hopeless, you better have some like red flags go up and go, uh-oh, we need to be really, really careful with this child and check in on everything. What is their like environment like?
Mm.
Do they have skills to cope, etc. And like, I mean, I would hate to put a kid like that on medication, but because that's really, really young. But sometimes it gets so severe that in order to just be able to
Keep them
stabilize it,
alive. Yeah.
go talk to your
Yeah.
doctor and see if that's something that's needed. Again, it's really, really young to go on meds, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And I mean that's not often,
no. And I
right?
wouldn't,
But
I
it's
wouldn't
just
necessarily recommend like
no.
that as
Yeah.
a strategy, but it can be really, really severe for some kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So just do whatever you can.
yeah,
Yeah. And yeah, so that emotional neglect is so subtle.
hmm
And even like the no like I don't think that people think that like not having food in the fridge is child traumatic. Like they like that uh like impoverish like poverty
yeah,
can
total,
be like
yeah,
sort of say a
yeah,
small t
yeah,
trauma,
yeah. I
right? Like
mean, maybe even big T. This is where like there is no science behind that definition. It's a little bit, maybe that's an unfair statement. It's not quite that clear cut.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so you
Yeah.
can, if you're impoverished to a degree where you don't know if you're going to have enough food for the week and you might actually die, that put that in big T trauma. Like that's intense enough for it to be
Right,
like life
right.
threatening
Hmm.
directly. You have the awareness that you might not survive because you don't have access to food. Now you need to be in a really, really dire situation to have that. But even having food insecurity over time, yeah, it can be really, really traumatic to a
Hmm.
kid. And that can lead to like hoarding behaviors, right? Kids who then start to kind of like keep snacks under their bed, or they'll like make sure that when there's food, they'll just like eat really, really quickly. So there are signs sometimes of these things
Yeah.
happening.
So maybe like even just like the inconsistency of food
Yes, yeah,
can just because then you don't know when
yeah,
again.
yeah,
Or do I deserve this? I guess I don't
yeah.
deserve food.
Sure, that can be the
You know?
internalizing for sure. It's like, oh, if my parents don't provide me with food, it must mean maybe I don't deserve it. That can definitely be one way that kids
I'm
start to
not
kind of
worth
like
it enough or
connect.
something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
which is really sad.
yeah,
Yeah,
totally. And kids make up everything
yeah,
that they don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They'll fill in the blanks for sure.
Yeah, they'll fill in the blanks. Um, so what are some other signs of say like emotional neglect?
Um, I think
Like what does that look like?
I think sometimes as adults we forget to think like a kid, if that makes sense. Being able to read a child and what they're saying, like they can express how they're feeling, and so they can actually tell you sometimes if you really, really choose to listen, right? But that can be really hard. So sometimes they don't have the words, sometimes they don't have the ability to express, but sometimes they can say things, I don't know, like really subtle statements like, I don't know, I mean, I don't feel safe at home is not a subtle statement, but something along those lines where they'll communicate to you something that makes you go, oh, that's weird, right?
Like I don't want to be here today.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Or
and that could be
or
nothing, but it could also mean
right,
something. So if you're like a teacher, for example, and you have a
right.
kid who comes in and 3, 4 times a week they're like, I don't want to be here, right? It's just like, well, maybe you need to inquire as to like why, like what's happening. It's just like, does that mean you don't want to be here? Period. Like you don't want to be alive, or does
Dig a
that mean you
little
want to be at
deeper.
school? you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
And so if you
Right.
have the
Yeah.
opportunity, and as a parent too, if like maybe your kid is experiencing something outside your home that you're not aware of. It's like, I don't want to be here. Like, you don't want to be home, or like you'd rather be back at school, or does
Hmm.
that mean you don't want to be here? Right? Some parents just like um,
Brush it off.
brush it off a little bit. It's just like it's just a
Right.
kid being a kid. It's like, well, sometimes it isn't. Now, I don't want to be like alarmist either and be like, oh, you should like be really careful with your parents,
No, I get that.
because
Yeah.
the majority of kids don't have emotional abuse or neglect in the household, right?
Yeah.
It is a smaller proportion of the population, but it does happen. Now, the other thing that I think is important to touch on is it's not a statistical certainty that because you have a small t or big T trauma experience that you will have a traumatic response. Sometimes, like, we're resilient beings, we're both fickle and resilient. I think that's a bit of the paradox of the human experience. Um, you don't necessarily have a long-term impact just because you have exposure to traumatic things.
Hmm.
So I also don't want to kind of like set this up as if your kid feels like they weren't emotionally supported, they're going to be traumatized. That's not how that works. Kids are really, really resilient, like I said earlier, right? But yeah, really being able to tune in to what your kid is saying, to how they're behaving. I think one of the big things is marked changes in behavior. So if all of a
Hmm.
sudden, out of nowhere, they're just like
The
shifted,
behavior
you're like,
changes. Yeah,
what?
that
That
signals
could be,
something.
yeah, that could
Yeah.
be a big sign, right?
Yeah.
Not always, but it can be. So
Right.
it's hard with emotional abuse. It's
Right.
really, really hard to kind of like pin it.
Yeah, totally. And when you said like, "Oh, kids are just being kids," that comment almost makes me think like, that's almost like people invalidating kids
Yeah,
sometimes,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah. Sometimes it definitely is. Just,
and I almost think that can be a little bit of add an impact. Like, say it like
hmm.
sometimes I hear like like stop your crying or suck
Yeah,
it up,
yeah.
like that has to have an impact on
Of
children.
100%
Like,
it does. 100% it does. Yeah.
yeah, because like I know my experience just with like being a child and then having children and then going through our own therapies is like the common thing I see and hear, and even in like addiction rooms and recovery and
Hmm.
all that, is like how important feelings are,
Hmm.
and like validating feelings for myself and for
Hmm.
my children, and like almost trying to, I find feelings is a very truthful place,
Yes. Ooh, that's a
right?
really interesting statement. Okay. Um, yeah. So I'm gonna push back a little bit on that,
Sure.
because there's some people who believe that because they feel things, it must be true, which is a difference between the cognition and the emotional part of the brain, right?
Okay.
But at the same time, the experience of the feeling is true. So if you feel a certain way, you are feeling that way. That part is 100% true. You
Yeah.
cannot say that someone isn't feeling sad if they're sad, right? That just doesn't make sense. But
So, okay, yeah. And then I'm
it,
going to add to after
sure,
that. Yeah.
let's take a different emotion. Maybe that's a little bit easier to work with. Um, um, Something doesn't have to be stressful, but you might be stressed about it. Does that make sense? Right? Like,
Yes, like it's two separate things.
yes, exactly.
You,
So
right.
it um, getting cut off when you're driving doesn't have to be frustrating, but it can
No.
be. And some
Yeah.
people are just kind of like, yeah, I got cut off, whatever. So it's not
Right.
this that just because you feel something, it must be. That's a what we sometimes refer to as a cognitive distortion. I feel something, therefore it must be true. Right? The association of what that feeling means must be true. So that's the pushback I wanna bring here. But the emotion itself is true. So in that moment, if someone is sad and you're like, ugh, but they don't need to be sad about this, and you tell them that, that's invalidating. They are sad.
Right.
It's too late. At that point, just validate the emotion. They're already sad. You're not going to make the emotion magically disappear. It doesn't work that way. But
But,
can they learn to have that not be something that makes them so sad? Sure. Right. And you can take
right.
something like, oh, my friend texted me that they're actually not going to come to my birthday party. A kid might be really sad about that. And that might be pretty devastating to them. Does it have to be something that's sad? We're to the point where they're like crying? Doesn't have to be, but is it a bad thing that they are? No. So it's just like working with the two and making sure that you're not just saying, oh my God, that's so sad that your friend didn't come. It's just like, well, I actually don't mind. It's like, no, no, but that's sad, right? Like, you don't want to also like
That's almost
create,
projecting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't want to just be like, these every scenario is sad, or every type of this scenario is frustrating. Like, let your kids tell you what their experience of that scenario is.
And then hopefully you are a regulated, safe parent, that you have that
Yes.
relationship
Yeah.
channel kind of open
Yeah.
so they can tell you about their feeling. But I almost think that channel could close a bit if, say, your kid brings their feelings to
Yes.
you and you're like, come on, you shouldn't be sad about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's
Like,
probably the most
there's
common.
going to be another birthday.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just
Yeah,
wash it over
it's
instead of
true.
being like, yeah, like I would be sad. Like, how would you validate? My first thing is like that, yeah, I would be sad too if someone canceled on me.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
That's validating?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. As a therapist, I would never do that because then I'm talking about myself. As a parent, you have a different relationship, right? So parents can
Okay.
definitely do. It's like, yeah, I get it. Like I was sad too when that happened to me, or that'd be sad to me. But the therapeutic relationship is
Yeah.
supposed to be like it's kind of fabricated in a way where like I'm not really here. You're talking to me, but it's not. Nothing about this is about me. And
Right.
so I would say something, and outside the four walls of therapy might sound really weird, but I'd say something like, "Oh, it sounds like that made you really sad." Right? Like I could see why that makes you really sad. Maybe I'd stretch it into that a little bit, but I
Right.
would never go into it from the perspective of I feel that emotion too in those moments. Let's connect over that. The reasons are complex, and we can go into the details around that. But as a parent, you can definitely validate an emotion like that. But you
So you
can
can bring
also,
your experience and feeling close to their experience
yeah,
and feeling
and you can
as
also,
parents or
yeah, you
close
can.
people, say.
But you don't have to. You can just be like, um, yeah, I that is sad.
That
Right? You
is
can keep it
kind of
like
like you're right.
you're right. You're
Yeah.
correct
Yeah.
in feeling that feeling, or if that's the feeling you're feeling, that's correct.
Because if someone is always saying you're wrong, like say you're saying you're validating, you
Yeah,
almost make someone feel wrong. Then does that not disrupt a child's self-esteem
it can.
over
Well,
time
so
or
the way that
something?
I like to demystify emotions is to look at them almost as if we're like
Demystify.
robots,
Yeah.
right? So it's just like, what are emotions? Why do we have emotions?
Yeah.
It's like I like to think of them as ways for your brain to force you to pay attention to your environment. So it's like you feel fear because there's something maybe scary. You're not sure, but maybe. You feel anger because you need to respond through a maybe like fight response to your environment because you might be in danger. So you need to like express that you're not the safe person to be around or that someone else might get hurt.
Call to action.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, exactly. And so when you think about emotions as a tool that your brain uses to force a consciousness to think about the environment, it kind of takes away the whole like intensity of it all because emotions are super, super intense sometimes.
So it's like a signal.
It's a signal. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, hey, I need you to pay attention to this because something's happening that you might not be aware of.
Right.
And so the emotion comes up and then you're forced to think about it. It's like, oh, I am scared because I'm walking late at night and I heard a weird noise. Like I want to be paying attention to that, right? It's
so
a
like,
survival mechanism.
Right. And so it's like that relation of like my feeling is happening first in a
Yes.
way.
Yeah.
And then my brain catches up to go,
Yeah.
what's this feeling about?
Yes.
And it's like if I start having a good relationship with like my heart and my brain,
Mm-hmm.
then I can respond to that fear that's happening
Mm-hmm.
over there.
Mm-hmm.
That may be fear, or it's like, or is my brain going to everything? Is this a maybe fear, maybe fear, maybe fear?
Yeah.
Because that can also happen too, where you're like,
Totally.
now your brain's a little bit going off because you got fears, maybes,
Yeah.
that aren't really real.
Yeah. Yeah, your brain can catastrophize super quickly, right? Everything is a fear,
Yeah.
and then you're panicking at every turn. Like if you're hiking in a forest and you hear a rustling in a bush, and that makes you run away, probably an overreaction, right? But it's good to be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's just a squirrel.
Yeah,
and that's normal. It's natural.
Yeah.
So we got to look at these emotions as just like a tool that our bodies and our brains use to force us to pay attention to what's happening in our environment. And it doesn't have to be a direct, like a fear response. It can be a little bit more existential or complex, as, with like sadness or like embarrassment, for example. There's like a social component. It's like, well, why do we get embarrassed, right? Or confused? So it can get really, really complex that way. But yeah.
Yeah, so it's like with development, with recovery, with just being a human, it's like to feel is good and then to respond appropriately to the feelings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And like, is this like a anger thing? Is this a fear thing? Is this a, embarrassment, shame thing? And like having a healthy balance to respond to those emotions, those signals.
Totally.
But yeah, we're getting close to the end here, but like I guess what like the people can have that cognitive dissonance and they can have that unhealthy balance, right? And when that happens, I think you get into the whole like bad coping, bad
Yeah.
relationships, right?
Yeah.
Things are maybe too extreme over here and not enough over here.
Yeah.
And then you don't have good communication
Yeah.
with yourself and the environment and people.
Yeah, it all kind of builds on each other. There's
Yeah.
a term called scaffolding that we use
Yeah.
in therapy, and usually that's meant to be used in a more like positive way. It's just like you build a foundation, then you build the skill, and on top of that skill, you build the next one. But it can go reverse, right? You can have a poor foundation, and then you have a maladaptive, that's maybe a bit of a clinical term for it, but like a not so great coping mechanism. And then on top of that, you build the next coping mechanism that works off of that. And then you're kind of like scaffolding all these responses that aren't actually
Right.
super useful in a social context,
Mm-hmm.
but feel useful from like I just need to be protected, right? Because that's, your brain doesn't care about thriving. Your brain cares about surviving. And so if you look at it from
Yeah.
that perspective, it starts to make sense why people have these coping mechanisms that you're like, but you're not doing well. It's just like, yeah, but I'm alive.
It's low. I know, right? The bar is low.
The bar can be really low.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially
I mean,
like in the addiction.
I'm simplifying it a little bit, but like
Yeah, yeah.
that's kind of the idea. Is just like, is it better to be dead or is it better to use alcohol to cope? Like, well, the individual probably would rather be alive than dead. Now, some people would legitimately want to die, and that's like a severe response to like this
Right.
hopelessness or withdrawal and stuff like that. But these maladaptive coping mechanisms are generally like a way to survive and feel somewhat okay.
Yeah, and like people go to the drinking to like, yeah, they're trying to solve. This is a solution for that problem they have.
Yeah.
That's all they can do, right?
Yeah.
They're left with, and then that scaffolding happens. It's almost like it's entrenched.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes harder to get out of it, for sure.
Yeah, and like I'm in the rooms and I see that all the time. It's like you just have adults and it's like entrenchment, like deeply rooted patterns.
Yeah.
Like it's really hard.
It's so
change
complex.
An adult, like even one that's really trying to change.
Mm-hmm.
So
mm-hmm.
I think sometimes like the best they like I think that parents today have the great cross to bear is that like try to be the best parent you can be at home.
Yeah.
And like consistent, because trying to change an adult is almost impossible.
It's
pretty hard.
It becomes harder and harder, I think. Yeah. I think one of the things too is like parents, you're allowed to mess up. Like you're allowed to make mistakes.
Right.
You can be reactive and repair that, right? You can
Yeah.
go to your child and say, hey, the way like mom acted or the way I acted wasn't super great, and I'm really sorry about that. I'm going to work on that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That can be like so great for a kid to see accountability, to see apologizing, to see like the fact that you're planning to be better and do better. Like that can create such a huge avenue for children to go, oh, I want to be like that. I want to, like, I felt so good to have my parent tell me that what they did wasn't great because I felt so hurt. And so like it's okay to mess up. It's okay to not be perfect. If you what's that saying? Like the enemy of perfection is the enemy of good enough, or whatever. And so like if you try to be perfect, you're going to suffer and you're going to fail, and that's going to be worse than just trying your best.
Yeah. And like there's so much in that repair of like by being apologetic, you show your child how to say sorry.
Totally. Yeah.
And like with empathy, and then if you do the follow through, like your kid also needs to learn all that too. Like I'm glad we're ending on this, and it's just like I think also too is like when you own your stuff and accountability, you teach accountability, and then you are like, I'm human too. It's okay for you to make mistakes and me make mistakes. Like I think
great
kids
message.
need that too.
For sure. Agreed.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sebastian, for being
so much
here.
For having me.
Yes, thank you. And I think we could easily talk another hour, but
I could talk about this for days.
For days. But thank you guys for being here, and I hope you come to the next one. Bye.